Today I'm gonna show you how to use GitOps approach and integrate Terraform and CircleCI. GitOps means not that you keep all your configuration files in the Git. Git is the source of truth. You declare your infrastructure, either it's Terraform, Ansible, or any other tool you're using, that you declare your infrastructure as a code in Git, and then when you make a change in your master branch, your set of tools can detect the change and apply it. All right, and let me show you a quick demo. So in this case, I'm gonna be using the Terraform and create the EC2 instance in AWS. So right now we don't have any EC2 instances. And here I have the main file, I have the provider and Terraform block where I define the backend S3. So let me quickly show you the demo how to create the EC2 instance using the GitOps approach. All right, so we are in the master right now. So let's go ahead and switch to different branch. Let's say git checkout -b, and for example, create EC2 instance. Now we inside that branch, and let's create our instance. All right, so like I said, it's gonna be a quick demo, and I will explain later on how do I get those IDs and AMI as well. So right now, just the simple AWS instance resource, and that resource is using the Ubuntu 18.04, and we're gonna create it in AWS. All right, so let's declare it in our branch. Then let's go and git add, git commit, and let's say create EC2, and let's push it in our branch. Now let me grab this and push it to the branch. All right, so let's go to the GitHub, go to pull requests, and let's create the new pull request from the branch that we just created, create EC2 instance. And that's the changes that we're gonna create the EC2 in AWS. And click create pull request. Again, when we're gonna click on create pull request, CircleCI will detect the change and it will run set of tests and also will run the Terraform plan. So in the CircleCI, you can see that it detected the open pull request only to the main branch, which is the master, and it will run the validate and plan only. So it's not gonna apply just yet. Let's wait a little bit till it finishes. All right, now plan is done. Okay, so let's go, and all the checks have passed. All right, so now the authorized person can go to the open pull requests, and that's our pull request, create EC2 instance. And under the checks, you can click on show all the checks, and here you have the plan. We can open the plan in new window and check the plan for Terraform plan, and it will tell you what it's planning to create EC2 instance. And it's gonna add one instance to modify our infrastructure, and we'll add one resource to it. All right, so let's close it. And GitOps means that when we're gonna merge this to main branch master, we don't need to do anything else. We just approve that we declare that the EC2 instance has to be created. And when we declare and approve this pull request, that's all what we need to do. And now our tools, in our case, it's going to be CircleCI, will detect that we merged something in the master, and it will now run validate, plan, and also apply. So at this point, when you approve the pull request to master, you don't need to do anything else, and you get the result. And let's wait a little bit, and it will run plan and apply, and create these two instances actually in AWS. All right, it was applied. Now let's check in our AWS console. Let's refresh, and we can see that the EC2 was created by the act of merging that pull request to the master. And that's pretty much all for this demo, and well, let's get started. First of all, let's go ahead and create the GitHub repository. All right, let's click new, and let's call it infra2. And let's keep it private and create repository. Right now we have the empty repository where we're gonna keep our Terraform code and CircleCI config. Okay, the next step is to go and create the directory locally. And let's call it, well, let's call it exactly the same thing. And let's use some mkdir and then infra2. And then let's switch to that directory using cd command. And now let's initialize it. Empty repository. And also it's gonna complain that the master is depreciated, but we're gonna keep using the master for now, the name for the branch. And then we need to establish connection between the remote repository and the local one. And in order to do that, we're gonna need to run this git remote add a region command. Let me copy it and then just let me run it. All right, so now we have the completely empty repository. Now let's go ahead and open it. All right, so like I said, it's the empty repository, and let's start by creating the main.tf file for our Terraform. And we're gonna keep all the files, all the definitions in this file for simplicity. Okay, so we're gonna be using the AWS for this example. So the first thing, we're gonna provide the provider block, and well, we're gonna be using AWS provider, and we will define the default region, which is the US East one for this example. The next step is to define Terraform block, and let me define first and I'll explain. All right, the first part, which is the Terraform and then required providers. This is just the limitation, restrictions on what version of that provider we're going to be able to use, so higher than 3.0. And also, since we're going to be using the CircleCI to run Terraform plan apply, then we're not going to be able to store the state of the Terraform of our infrastructure locally. So we need to have the ability to store our state remotely. And in Terraform, you have a few backends that we can use, but since we're going to be using the AWS, we're going to use the backend S3 bucket, where we're going to upload all the states for our platform, for our infrastructure. And also, optionally, you can enable state locking using DynamoDB table. But for this simplicity, I'm not going to use the DynamoDB table for remote state. That's pretty much, that's all that's for this video, just one single backend. All right, so now let's optionally, if you're planning to run maybe Terraform plan locally, you would need to have a gitignore file where you define that, like providers and some other files that don't you want to keep local. You don't want to push them to GitHub. Let's create this gitignore file. And here, so since we define, let me tell you about that backend. So that's going to be the bucket where we're going to upload the state, and this is going to be the file which will be used, and this is the region, obviously. And now let's go ahead and create the S3 bucket in AWS. Let's go to the console and type, well, in the search bar S3, and let's create our bucket. So let's click create bucket. And well, it has to be unique, and well, most likely you want to use your some kind of domain name, but that's going to be the domain develops by example tf state. Also, you can enable the versioning, but for this simplicity, like I said, I don't want to make it more complicated. And the region will be US East 1. All right, let's create the bucket. And now we have the bucket. All right. Now, well, we need to create, so since we're going to be running the Terraform from the CircleCI, we need to create the user, IAM user, we need to create a couple IAM policies to access the S3 bucket and launch EC2 instances. And also we're going to create the group. So let's go ahead and take care of that first. Let's go to the search bar and type IAM. And first, let's go ahead and create the first policy. Well, before that, let me just show you what we have in AWS. if you're gonna go to, well, VPC, or you just search for VPC, then just want to show you what we have in our VPC. So right now we have the one single VPC. It's not default one, I created it. It's one well, not default VPC. Then I have the one single subnet, which is the public subnet. And then I also have the one additional route table. So this is the public route table with the default route to the internet gateway. Well, that's the one. So I have the default route, the first one, and that's the second route that I have in order to make that subnet public. And of course, I created the internet gateway and attached it to the VPC. So we have one VPC, one subnet, which is the public with the default route to the internet gateway. That's it. And the subnet ID will be important. So let's just take a notice that we're going to be using this subnet ID. All right. So let's go and now switch to IAM and go to the policies and create our first policy. Let's navigate to JSON tab and let me paste the definition. And that's going to be the one. Let me make it bigger. All right, this is the first policy, and this policy will allow that Terraform user to describe and terminate instances, and also run create EC2 instances. And those are some other EC2 resources that this policy will get access to. And that's the part also important. So I can probably say that instead of defining the ID of that subnet, I can use the star like here, but I want to be very specific about where I allow this user to create those EC2 instances. And let me show you, this is subnet ID, which comes from, let me just open another tab, VPC. And let's go to the subnets. And this is ID that I'm gonna be using here. All right, let me go forward. I'm not gonna add any tags, but well, I'm gonna give it a name. And this is my custom name. I'm gonna call it Terraform EC2 run access. And well, let me click create policy. All right, this is the first policy that will allow us to create EC2 instances and delete them. Now let's create the second policy to allow us to store state in S3 bucket. Let's go to the policies and let's create the second one, the last one. Let's go to JSON and paste some policies, some definitions. And here, so you have two statements, and those are the actions. So I'm going to be able to list bucket and also get and put object in that bucket. And here is important part. So this is the name of your bucket. So if you go back here, type S3, and that's exactly the name of that bucket. That's the name of the bucket. And it has to come here, DevOps by example.tf. And also I will specify that this particular user will be able to access only one single file in that bucket. Well, of course I can do stars and other configurations, but I want to be very specific what this particular user will get access to. All right, so that's the one. And this is for a remote backend state. All right. And now let's click review and give it a name Terraform S3 access. And let's click create policy. Okay, so now we have the two policies. Let me close this. And here I can filter by customer managed and those two policies that we just created. Now let's go ahead, and the best practices is to create the IAM groups and attach those policies to groups and then place your users in those groups. So we're gonna do that. Let's go to the group and create the new group. Let's call it the Terraform, capital T. And here, attach policy, we're gonna say customer managed, and we're gonna select those two policies that we just created. Next, and create group. Now we have the group with those two policies attached. And we need our user. So let's go to user and let's create user and let's call it Terraform. And let's give it a programmatic access only. Click next. And then, well, if you're getting started, maybe it's a good idea to put it in admin. In that way, you're not gonna get permission access when you try to create, but I'm gonna follow best practices and restrict the access. And I know what this particular user will get access. So I'm gonna put it in Terraform. But if you're not able to figure out what permissions allowed, maybe admin just to test it out will work for you. All right, let me click next. I'm not gonna give any tags. And also let's create the user. And I would need to use those credentials. So let me click on download CSV file with those credentials, and I'm gonna use them later. Right, let me close. Now let's go ahead and create the CircleCI config. Let's create the folder. It's gonna start with a dot and then CircleCI. And then the config.yaml. This is the naming convention that you have to follow for the CircleCI, and config.yaml. And here we're gonna define our config. And that's gonna be, let me paste it first. All right, so that's gonna be our config. And we're gonna be using the orb, CircleCI orb. And well, the orb, you can think about it as the function. So it's just abstraction layer on top of the just simple commands like cd, Terraform apply, etc. So it's just the ability to aggregate those commands in one single form, like a function, and then be able to provide certain arguments to that function, like checkout, context, persist workspace, etc. So those are the orbs, just the functions. And this is the link for that orb if you want to know what kind of arguments. For example, this is the command from that orb, from that module. And you can find in that link exactly what commands are available for each of those and descriptions. And this is the current version of that particular CircleCI orb 1.20. All right, so we're gonna define that we're gonna be using this particular orb and we're gonna call it Terraform. And then we're gonna be able to use those functions, those commands from that orb inside. So this is the orb, which comes from here. And this is the command like validate, the plan, and apply. Let me show you. Let me open this. Here. Then that's the orb. All right, so, and actually, all right. I guess they have the new version now. Let me update it. Okay, so, and for example, here, validate. You can scroll all the way down. Those are examples and those are jobs, for example. And here on the left-hand side, you can have the validate command. And those are the arguments that this particular validate command will accept. Like checkout, for example, here, like perform checkout as the first step, and then context. Context is the generic one, and I'll explain later on what does it mean. Okay, so, and those are the set of jobs that we're gonna run. And by default, well, okay, let's first gonna talk about Terraform validate. This command will just validate the config for your Terraform. And checkout true, it means that it will git clone it. And context, well, context actually is the convenient way to share environments between your CircleCI projects. So it will allow you to create like the context and place and create environment variables under those contexts. And then you can share the context, and those environment variables will be applied to all of the projects where you share that context. And it's very convenient. Basically, it will allow you to share environment variables across all your GitHub repositories or CircleCI projects. Okay, so this is the validate, will validate Terraform config. The second one will run just Terraform plan. The first one, check out the same thing, context, it will get the same environment variables, and persist workspace, it means that it will save it. And then later, the next step will be attach workspace. So it's gonna just check out, git clone, does something, and persist whatever it does. So it's gonna be that workspace will be shared with the next job, which is this one, next step. And then require. So by default, we have right now we have the 3 jobs, array of 3 jobs, run 1, 2, and 3. And by default, they all be run at the same time in parallel. And requires this particular key allows you to define relationships between those jobs and steps. For example, this step not going to be run until it requires this Terraform validate to be run first. So this will run first. This is the second one. And then the last one, Terraform apply, requires Terraform plan, which is this one, the previous step. And here pretty much the same arguments. Attach workspace, it will attach this workspace with the Terraform config, then context, the same environment variables. And the only difference here will be that we're gonna run apply only on when the code will be checked to the master and not in any other branches or pull requests. And that's pretty much it. Filter branch master. All right, so if you call it, for example, if you created locally and call it something like main or something else, trunk, so you need to update this here as well. So it's going to be the name of your main development branch. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now, when we have that, let's just, and let me show you right now in our main TF, we don't have any resources in AWS that we're going to create. So let's go ahead and commit and push to the master. Okay, let's go back to the code. Let's type git status. And we have, well, one folder, one file, and let's add all of them. Git add everything, and then git commit, and maybe init commit. All right, and let's push it to master. Git push. And then it's gonna tell you that it needs to set up the region. And that's the final command, git push set upstream origin master, which will push to the master. All right, let's check in our GitHub repository and let's refresh it. All right, now we have 20 seconds ago, we have our code available here in our GitHub repository. Now, well, it's time to configure CircleCI build. Let's go to the Google and type CircleCI. And that's the circleci.com. And let me click on go to app. And well, first of all, let me sign out. Okay, the first thing, when you click go to app, it will ask you to log in. And I'm gonna be using the login with GitHub. In that way, it will get access to, well, all your repositories. And you're gonna be able to configure it. So let's go to the projects on the left-hand side, and now you can see that it discovered your projects if you used logged in with GitHub. So you can grant permissions to see all the projects, and that's the one infra 2 that we created, right? That's the one. Even if it's private, so CircleCI can see it. Now let's click on setup project, and it can detect that we use this config here. It can detect it from the definition from the Git. And when we're gonna click start building, it will start building the master branch, and it will fail because we don't have any permissions to do anything, right? So let me see. So this is the failed one. Let me click on it and click on validate, and Terraform could not find a context. So since we are using the context here, we need to create that context. All right, so let's go to the, let's click on, well, project settings, and then we need to go actually to organization settings. And then we should be able to see the context, and let's create the context. And let's call it, well, Terraform, so it has to match with this name, context Terraform. Let's create this context, create it, and then we can use that context and create environment variables under them. So this is the context Terraform, and let's create environment variable, the first one. Well, since we're gonna be using the AWS provider, the Terraform expects the same default environment variables. So this is the first one, AWS access key ID, and the value comes from in download file. Under download folder, I have this file that I just downloaded. Those are my credentials. Let me get it. And this is the first one, which will be the access key ID. Let me copy this and put it here. And the second variable that I need is the AWS secret access key. Right, and the secret access key comes from here. And don't worry about those credentials, I will delete that user after the video. Add environment variable. Okay, now we have the environment variables. And let me close this. And we're not gonna rerun it just yet. So this is our project, and it tried to run it first time and it failed. Also, since we're gonna be using the GitOps approach, we don't want to run CircleCI on each for each branch. We just want to run them when the pull request is created. So in order to do that, let's go to the project settings. And under the advanced, you can scroll down. And here is the option, only build pull requests. So it will always, like it says here, it will always build and run for default branch, like the master in our case. But it will ignore other branches unless the pull request is created from that branch to the master. All right, let me enable this, only build pull requests. All right, and let me close it. And now, well, let's go ahead and create our first instance. Let me define it here in made.tf. So let me paste it, and this is just very simple resource from AWS instance, and this is the first link that you can use to find additional arguments. But since we are created the IAM user with very limited permissions, so you're not going to be able even to create the EC2 instance with tags, so you need to add additional permissions to that user. So, well, okay, so we need to define those three variables. So the instance type will be, I guess, the smallest one, t3.micro, and then AMI. So let's use Ubuntu 18.04 first. And let me go to the, well, there are multiple ways how you can get AMI. You can build your own, of course, but I'm just gonna show you one of the way to find AMI ID. Go to EC2 instance, and then you can just go and launch instance. And make sure that you're in your region. And here in search bar, you can type Ubuntu and just search for it. And for example, I want to use 18.04. So let me grab this. This is the AMI ID. And let me paste it here. And also we need the subnet ID. And subnet ID, let's go to the VPC. And under the subnets, that's our single public subnet. Let's grab the ID and use it here. All right, and well, right now we have this in the master, but we don't want to have it in the master, right? So we want to make this change in our branch. So let's go ahead and create the branch git checkout -b to create new branch, and then maybe the name of the branch, create EC2 instance. And let's create that EC2 instance branch, and now we have our dedicated branch. and let's type git status. So we have the modification, this in our branch only, not in the master. So let's add that main.cf file, and then git commit, and let's provide a message add EC2 Ubuntu 18.04, and let's push it to our branch, which is the create EC2, right? And it's gonna give you this message. Let's grab this and push it to our branch. So it's not in master, but in our branch. Okay, so let's go to the GitHub now. Let's refresh it, and sometimes it gives you this link that you can click and create pull request, but just want to show you now we have the two branches, master and create EC2. Well, let's go to the pull requests, and let's click on new pull request and specify that we want to create pull request from our branch, create EC2 instance to master. And those are the changes that are gonna be applied to our infrastructure. And let's go ahead and create, well, before we're gonna click on create pull request, let me show you in the CircleCI. So let me close this. And in CircleCI, here. So so this is our first file build, and this is the second one. And you can see that it detected the change, that it detected the new branch, create EC2, but it's gonna ignore everything. So if you click here, it will tell you this project is configured to only run builds that have open pull requests. So right now, this particular change, well, it doesn't have the pull request. So now when we're gonna go ahead and click on create pull request, it's gonna actually, and well, here you need to click again, create pull request. It will detect that the GitHub opened a pull request and CircleCI detected it, and now it runs the validate. It will validate the Terraform config, and then it will run the plan. And also here you can see that in the pull request, it will CircleCI will show you some messages that it's running the validate and plan as well here. All right, so it will take some time to run the plan. And let's wait a little bit. All right, now plan is done. So, well, for example, right now you have the infra2 project and you have the open pull request. So that's what GitOps means. That means that when we're gonna merge this pull request, you don't need to do anything. It's gonna automatically, the CircleCI in our case, automatically detect the change, and it will apply it to our infrastructure. So GitOps, that means you declare something to be happened, and you don't actually in the Git run explicitly any tools. Your pipeline should be able to understand what happened and to apply it to your infrastructure. So now the authorized person who can make changes in your infrastructure can come here to open pull request. Then he or she can check what has been changed. For example, in this particular commit, so the EC2 instance was added. And also in the conversations here, you can scroll down and see all checks have been passed. So have passed. And here you can, before you merge this pull request, you can click on your plan. So the CircleCI plan, click on here. And you can see exactly under the plan what Terraform will do for your infrastructure. So it will create how it will modify it. So it's gonna create the AWS instance Ubuntu, and it will tell you that just the Terraform output will add one single resource, which is the Ubuntu, 0 to change and 0 to destroy. And if this what you want, you just merge pull request and you don't do anything else because your pipeline will handle it. So let me show you. So when you merge it, let me merge, confirm merge, and we don't have anything just yet, right? So if you go EC2, and it will now run the master, and you don't have the running instances just yet. and it's gonna run the validate again. So it's gonna merge it from the your branch to the master, and it will run validate, plan, and also apply since you approved that pull request. And it will create EC2 instance for you. All right, now it will wait a little bit and will run the apply. Okay, so now it's running apply. Terraform apply. And let me see here. Let me refresh it. Not yet, so it's gonna run it. All right, now it's applied. Okay, so let's check it here. Let's refresh it. And now we have the instance, right? So we followed GitOps approach and we created EC2 instance in our AWS. Also, well, let me show you how you can modify infrastructure as well. So let's go back here and maybe, well, you can probably update the AMI if you want to go to 2004, or even, for example, you want to delete it. You're not gonna run Terraform destroy, you can just delete this resource or comment out or delete, for example. But you're gonna need to, from that branch, you need to go to the checkout master. And then let's run git pull to get all the latest changes. And now we can, well, let's open the code. So this is our master right here, master. And now let's create git, check out new branch, and maybe delete EC2. That's gonna be different branch. And let's delete it just completely. And let's do git add. You can add everything or just one file, then git commit, and instead of I'm gonna say for commit message, remove Ubuntu, right? And let me push it. Grab this. Okay, let's go to the GitHub. Click on our repository. Let's go to pull requests. I'm gonna do it quickly, but it's gonna be exactly the same idea. Let's create the new pull request, and that's gonna be our master delete EC2 instance. And that's what we just deleted. Click create pull request, and then again, so when it's gonna detect it, right now it's not gonna run it, right? Even delete EC2 instance branch was detected. Let's click create pull request. And if your user has permissions, it will destroy it later on. But right now it's gonna run just plan. Close this. Maybe I'm gonna close this as well. And here you're gonna see all those CircleCI jobs running. All right, let's go back here. So this is, again, go to the repository, pull request. We know that we have one open pull request to remove the Ubuntu. Let's go there. And we can click on show all checks, and we have the plan here. Let's open the plan. And under the plan, we can go to the plan section and see what's gonna happen. So it's gonna tell you that, well, this resource will be destroyed. So it's gonna tell you that one is destroyed. Right, let me, well, just close this and merge pull request. And when I merge it, it will destroy. It will run it, and it will, hopefully, if I do have enough permissions to destroy it, it will destroy the EC2 instance. All right, it's completed, it applied. Well, we can go and check, but we know that it's gonna be successful build and one destroyed. Let's go to EC2, let's refresh it, and we know that we don't have any EC2 anymore. All right, that was the GitOps in action. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thanks. Bye.